Hey everyone, my name is Zach REDRUP and this is the It's Not a Phase podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by the Villa frontman, former Issues member, and more recently returning Woe Is Me vocalist, Michael Bohn. We chat all about the Villa's newly released debut EP, Save Yourself, how religion influences that project, why it took so long for the EP to come out, but also we discuss how the very unexpected Woe Is Me reunion came to be, how his relationship with the other members has changed over the past 10 years, some of their upcoming plans with this reunion, and loads more. Before we get started, let's cover off the boring stuff. If you enjoy this episode and would like to support the podcast, please consider subscribing, rating, and leaving a review wherever you're listening to this. We also have a Patreon, where everyone gets access to each episode a week earlier than everyone else, and a merch store too. You can also follow and reach out to me on social media. All of the links can be found at itsnotaphase.co.uk. That's itsnotaphase.co.uk. And with all of that out of the way, let's jump right into this week's episode of It's Not a Phase. What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining me on this episode of It's Not a Phase, where I'm joined by Michael Bohn, frontman of The Villa, and recently coming back to Woe Is Me. How are you doing, man?
Doing all right. Crazy. Crazy times.
Just having a bit of a breather at the moment from the whirlwind that is your life now. Yeah,
exactly. Been a hectic week in a good way, but things are just happening really fast.
Popping off really fast, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, like you say, the past week or so has just been absolutely super crazy for you after you guys kind of announced that you're coming back. The Woe Is Me reunion, we'll get into that in a bit, but what I want to talk about first is your other project, The Villa, because you guys just put out your debut EP, Save Yourself. Mm-hmm. So The Villa kind of came to be off the back of your other project that you had. It didn't last too long, WildHeart. Obviously, that was kind of like a brief project, and then it kind of dissolved and you went onto The Villa from there. Can you kind of briefly explain how The Villa kind of came to be? Because, you guys are still kind of a relatively new project, and how you kind of like settled on the name The Villa.
So basically, long story short, after the WildHeart thing happened, so in WildHeart, if anybody doesn't know, I was playing drums. Basically, I got kind of like talked back into doing vocals. They're like, hey, man, like, I know you love drums and everything, but like, I feel like you were just supposed to do vocals. Like, you're supposed to be a vocalist. So, so they asked me to do that. They're like, yo, if you're down, like you should do it. And I was like, okay, all right, I'll do it. So we did. And then that's kind of how The Villa came to be. I basically just went back to, like doing vocals and everything. And yeah, we settled on the name The Villa. It actually comes from an old like cult. Back in the day, it's called the Villa of the Mysteries. And it was just like this really cool, like, it was like an old cult. And they still have it's really cool because the building's still there. Like, it's like an ancient, like, cult and everything. But that's where we kind of like the name derived from, is the Villa of the Mysteries and everything. And so that's kind of where we got the name. And we kind of just rode with that. And it's basically, the Villa is kind of just like a project to get people to kind of get out of their comfort zones in a sense. Like I've talked about it briefly in the past, but like, for me, it took me, experiencing the world, traveling and stuff, and like seeing other people, cultures, everything to really get me out of my bubble. And I grew up in a really religious environment and everything. I grew up in church and everything. I needed to step out of my comfort zone. And for me, religion was something that I felt like kind of held me back in a sense. So that's why we kind of play off that, the whole religious thing and the cult thing. But it's kind of like something to get people to, push them to open up their minds, question themselves, like, question like, why do I think this? Why do I believe this? Like, is there something else out there? Is there another answer? Just like push your boundaries, It's okay to question yourself, and it's okay to question your beliefs. And I'm glad that I did, so that's kind of where like the Villa came from. And that's kind of like where the name came from and why we come into that and everything. So.
Well, as you've just mentioned, there's quite a few references to religion throughout The Villa so far. Like the band logo is kind of like a cross, isn't it, on the top of a kind of like a hill kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then you've got obviously some of the lyrics and the EP cover as well. You've got the gate behind you, and you're kind of like praying and stuff. From your perspective, how much does religion play a part into how The Villa is portrayed and is kind of like influenced?
A pretty big part. And I only use religion just because it was such a big part of my life. For someone else, it might be something different, might be a different experience, but it was such a big part of my life. And I feel like it's something that I want to kind of write about and like get out and get off my chest. And there was good in it. It kept me from being kind of like a shithead, I wasn't like partying all the time. I wasn't involved in drugs and stuff. It kept me out of that. But morally and what I believe now, is completely different than, I just hate that I was in such a narrow mindset, So religion definitely plays a big part of it just because I guess it's my experience, with that and everything. So I just want to push people to think, question it, because for the longest time, people would try to get me to think, and like push me, and I was just like, no, this is the only way, this is the only answer, and it took experience, like I said, experiencing other people, other cultures, and everything to break me out of that little box and everything. So I just want people to really think, and when we do have lyrics that are influenced a lot by religion and what we see and like what we've experienced like within the church and everything, I feel like it's pretty apparent, especially in Ritual Abuse. That's a song that is really lyrically driven by religion and kind of like people in power, religious people that are in power and everything. So that's kind of where that song, that's kind of what that's about and everything.
Yeah.
So
I think even if it's not just religion, I think every now and then it's good to have your values and your kind of beliefs kind of maybe not challenged or questioned, but, kind of approached and, well, yeah, I guess challenged, because you want to make sure hey, is this actually what I believe? Have I considered these other options or other perspectives? Yeah. I think that's part of how people kind of grow and develop as well as they get older. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And it's good to have that, like you said, maybe not necessarily challenged, but what you believe, is it necessarily not that it's necessarily true or false, but there's just so many things that I grew up believing that I look back now and I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? Especially morally, I'm just like, oh my God, why did I believe that? Why did I think that way? And it kind of makes me nauseous to think about, but I'm just glad that I did kind of challenge that and out of that box, I'm not saying what I believe now is right. I don't think there's specifically a yes and no answer. It's not that black and white, but I'm just glad that I grew and, made some changes, I think that kind of is aided by you were lucky enough to kind of tour the world, you get experience of cultures or people's experiences and perspective and stuff. And then you kind of filter that through your own lens and your own life. And that's when you kind of do I actually feel this way? No, actually, I kind of feel this way about it. This is my opinion on this X, Y, Z. Yeah. And you're you kind of wonder, am I just walking blindly and I'm just following this blindly because this is what I was told? You got to kind of look at that and go, hey, am I just doing this because I was told this, or do I actually believe this, or do I think that this is okay? Yeah. Because until that point, say you kind of got blinkers, that's kind of all you really know. You don't really have anything else to lend that perspective from. Yeah. I love the, not to dive so far into it, but I love Gervais, his perspective on, he does he did an interview and they asked him a little bit about religion and stuff. And right. The way he puts it, a kid's mind is like a sponge. They're just soaking up information. And if you're told this one thing from the time you're born and you don't really get out and travel and you only stay in this one town, this one state or city that you're in for your life, that's all you're going to know. And that's all you're going to believe. As a kid, your mind is like a sponge. So you're just soaking up all this information. You're told all these things and you're just well, this has to be true. My parents told me this, or the preacher told me this, or whoever, it may be. This has to be true. I don't know. I just love his perspective on religion with a lot of things. And so I think Ricky Gervais is a badass. So. Well, you kind of mentioned earlier, obviously, for a brief kind of overview for others, obviously you parted ways with Issues. You started up WildHeart not too long after, where you were on drums. That kind of dissolved, and then you started The Villa. And, this is your first project that I know of anyway, since you're a much older band, Path Less Traveled, where you're just doing vocals on your own. You're the only vocalist. I don't know if you know, Tyler. So Tyler was also in a Path Less Traveled. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have hit. So basically, it was you and Tyler for 3 different bands on the trot.
Pretty much, yeah. But yeah, it's cool. It is cool to It was cool to have that freedom. It was a little nerve wracking because you got to kind of step up and go, all right, it's kind of all on me now, which is fine. But you got to step up to the plate and go, all right, well, here it is. I gotta do it. Can't fall back on anybody. And that was one thing that was kind of nice in a sense, was if I was stuck on something, or if I was like, yo, I can't get this last line, or whatever it may be. I had somebody else to come in and shoot ideas,
Yeah.
But at the time I kind of like the freedom of me being able to do whatever I want and not have to run it by somebody else. Or, hey, what do you think about this? Or, hey, blah, blah. And I'll ask the other guys. I'll be like, hey, I'll still ask them hey, is this cool? But it's just nice to have that freedom that it's I can write about whatever, and I don't share that with another vocalist,
So when you were kind of writing lyrics when you were in those bands with Tyler, was it kind of you did roughly 50-50 on songs, where you kind of had to settle on a topic or something like that?
It depends on this song. There were songs where he may write most of it, or I might write a lot of it. It just depends on the song. I wouldn't say it was 50-50, because each song's different, or he may have an idea for a song or I might have an idea for a song. So it just depends. It really depends on the song. It wasn't we would split the vocals right down the middle, It was just more of collabing back and forth with each other and everything. And like I said, there were songs that he may feel really close to, and then there were songs where I felt really close to. So it just depends on the topic and what songs you really connect with and everything.
Yeah. So with the Villa, it's just you being the vocalist this time around. Were you kind of a bit apprehensive of doing that? Because as well as, with those other projects, you were mainly screaming, and now, you're doing a lot of clean vocals now. And, your vocals have definitely developed and improved over the years.
Yeah. It was cool. Cause one thing that is tough. So I have I won't go into it or anything crazy, but I actually ended up having a big heart-to-heart with Sky from Issues. We talked, a few months ago or so. We had a good talk, and it was great. And we had a great heart-to-heart. We understood each other, and we both apologized for things that we said and everything. And it was overall just a great talk, and I'm glad that we did that. But one thing that I told him, I said, I realized there were areas that I could have stepped up in. I don't necessarily agree with how things went down, but, I told him, I said, hey, look, I admit, I could have done this, or I could have done this, and he was like, yeah, same thing. We could have done this, or we could have done this better, whatever it was, but we had a great heart to heart, and it was a great conversation. But with the Villa, one thing that I will say, I feel having said that, I realize looking back now, there are areas that, okay, well, maybe I could have done a little more here, or maybe I could have done this differently. Looking back, I don't know if I really got ample time to really develop.
Because you were kind of thrown into it, right? Of course, whenever you look at things retrospectively, you'll always think of things you can improve on.
Exactly. It was hey, you're going to sing now. And having said that, like I said, there are things that I could have done differently, and I could have there are areas that I could have stepped up in. But I just feel there was so much pressure in that time that I just didn't really have time to really develop. And after the Issues stuff went down, I really just took that time to develop. It was kind of nice because I didn't have the pressure of all right, you got to perform 100%. You better nail this. I didn't have that pressure was kind of off my shoulders. The situation sucked, but that pressure wasn't there anymore. Yeah. So able to just all right, well, now I can develop without feeling really stressed all the time, or feeling oh, I better perform this 100%, I better nail all these parts. So within that time, I was able to obviously I did the WildHeart thing and play drums, but I was actually able to sing and practice and stuff, and actually get better. I'm not anywhere near what I want to be now. I still want to grow. I still want to get better. I still have ways to go, and I admit that, and I'm still learning, but I had that time off, to actually really develop. And that's one thing that I wish I would have gotten a little bit more time in Issues to just show what I could do. And having said that, like I said, I've said a million times, I could have stepped up in areas, no doubt. That's one thing that talked about. But I wish I just would have gotten a little bit more time to like feel really confident about my performance and about my vocals, as far as like singing.
I mean, I still think like on that Headspace album, you sound great for someone who hasn't, traditionally sang or anything. Because like obviously you just kind of stuck to the screams. Like I don't know how everything exactly went down, but if you've never sang before, I think you did a great job there. Now listening to your stuff on this EP, you sound way more confident and comfortable in doing that.
Yeah, like I said, I think it has to do with like I say, that time off, and like for me to actually be able to develop and not feel all that pressure. Like, oh God, like if I'm singing now, oh God, if I don't perform this well live, like, oh my God, people are going to roast me or people are going to rip me apart. Like that pressure wasn't there. So I could actually like learn and like really develop.
Well, you've definitely come a long way, man. Your vocal chops on there are really good. So you should be proud of yourself.
Thank you.
So between this Save Yourself EP and the original 2 singles, there's kind of like a 2-year gap between them. Obviously, COVID probably didn't help matters at all. But were there any kind of other contributing factors that kind of maybe put a few speed bumps in the road to getting more material out from the Villa?
Yeah, there's about 1 million.
Just going to list them all up.
I don't even know where to start. Oh my God. It has been a ridiculous couple of years. So yeah, we put out the 2 singles, we got signed, and that kind of like put things on halt for a minute because we had to go, once we signed, we had to go back into the studio, and the label wanted us to actually just do an EP. So we're like, okay, well that put off like 6 months right there. Us going into the studio. We got the EP done. Real quick, I'll go into as much detail as I can. I'm going to try not to throw people under the bus. Like, I don't want to do that, but at the same time, like, this is legitimately why it got pushed back so many times, or like why it took so long. So we went to the studio, recorded the EP. We did a tour. We got put on a Scary Kids tour. It was like 2 weeks or whatever. We did that. We went into the hole financially, like bad on that.
Right. Okay.
We went in, we did that tour, not knocking anybody or anything, but we did that tour, and it cost us like thousands of dollars. So we got offered another tour, and we ended up turning that down because we did not want to go. It was almost like essentially the same tour. So I was like, no, so we pretty much were like, no, we're not doing that again. Like, and that's no offense to anybody, any bands or anything like that. We were pretty much just like, not a chance. Like, we're not going to go lose another like $3,000. Fuck that. And that's not even the market. I'll just be straight up. Like, that's not the market that the Villa wants to be in. If you listen to the Villa, we don't sound like any of those other bands. We don't sound like Scary Kids, like that's not the market that we're trying to be in. We wanted to be in like a completely different market. And we expressed that so many times. And we got another offer for essentially the same tour again, and we turned it down. So we were like, no, we're not doing that again. Like, this is not the market that the Villa wants to be in. Like, and we weren't even trying to say like, put us on tour with Bring Me the Horizon, put us on, because we're a new band. We don't expect that. But we were like, put us in this is the market that we want. We sent a list of bands in that market that we kind of wanted to be a part of. And we got sent an offer for another tour that we just knew, like, man, if we do this, we're going to go in the hole. Like, this is going to be bad. Because we're selling like, that tour we did, we're selling like, God, like 1 or 2 shirts a night.
Right. Okay.
How are we gonna survive?
And touring's not cheap if you're selling that much.
And gas prices and everything. And I'm like,
it's only getting worse.
Dude, we're having to survive off like $5 a day. And I'm 34 years old. I was doing that when I was like 19, 20 years old. And I can't do that now, and I'm willing to grind. I'm not saying we're not willing to grind, but like 34 years old doing like $5 a day, like that's batshit crazy.
Yeah,
like that's not happening. So we turned that tour down, and we're like, no, we're not doing that again. The label didn't really like that, I don't think. So,
right. Okay.
So I feel like that kind of caused tension right there, and it kind of made them, I don't know, I can't speak for them, but like from our perspective, it seems like they probably thought that like we were too cool or something, like we thought we were like hot shit, but it's like, no, like we're grown ass men at the end of the day. We want to, if we're going to do this, like you have to set us up to be successful.
And like, this isn't your first rodeo. It's not like this is your first touring band.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, you have to set us up to be successful. You can't put us on tours that we're going to make $5 a day on. look at major artists, man. The difference between like a lot of like indie labels and major labels is major labels set their artists up to be successful. They invest in these artists. You think some of these major artists did 10 tours in a van making $5 a day? No, not true. It doesn't happen. Like, I'm sure they did a couple tours that, you know, like they were kind of maybe like a little bit rough and like they had to grind. But I'm not saying that they didn't grind, but look at some of these major artists, like these major labels invest in them and they go, hey, we're going to set you up to be a fucking star. And we're going to set you up to be successful. Like, you can't throw us on a tour and have 12 people come to the show and us make $5 and like sell 2 shirts. Like, that's not setting your artist up for success. It's just not. So we turned that tour down, and I feel like from there on, there was like some just tension, man. Like, it was just tension. They pushed our album back. They said that they didn't want to put the album back without a tour. And we're like, okay, well, people were putting out, that doesn't make sense to us because people were putting out albums during the pandemic.
Yeah, when no one's touring.
When nobody was touring. So that makes no sense logically. So we were like, just put the freaking album out. So long story short, it was just going back and forth, us just trying to reach out and be like, hey, can we put the album out? Can we put the album out? Can we put the album out? I mean, it got pushed back like 4 or 5 different times.
Wow. Okay.
And this whole time we're just like, what is happening? This is ridiculous. So long story short, 2 years passed and we finally put out the album. Well, guess what? Nobody really gives a shit because 2 years had passed. The hype had completely died. It just wasn't there anymore. Like, the Villa, when it first came out, I'm not saying it was going to like pop off or anything, but people were curious. People were like, oh, what's going to happen here? You know, Michael and Kevin from Woe Is Me are in a band again, you know, so it had some traction, you know, people were interested, people were curious, but you put out 2 singles and you wait 2 years to put out a freaking EP, nobody's going to care anymore. You have 1,000 other bands putting out albums that people are going to care about. If we only have 2 songs out and then we wait 2 years and the label pushes our album back like 4 or 5 times, by the time it comes out, nobody's going to care. They're done. They're like, this album's never going to come out. I'm over it. That's what happened. So,
especially with like this kind of the way that music's consumed now, like you have some artists that are pumping out a new single every week and every 2 weeks.
Yeah. People, it's like, you know, people's attention spans are, you know, they want more music. Keep going, you know? So yeah, long story short, it just took like 2 years for it to get out. We tried to work and like say, I even sent emails where I like saying like, here's the marketing plan, blah, blah. Like, I was having to come up with our own marketing plan. I'm like, hey, what do you guys think about this? Like, hey, blah, blah, blah. What about this? What about this? And then just nothing.
So basically you kind of like putting in quite a bit of graft and you were just basically saying, give us the green light.
I was ready to go. Like, I'm the one that reached out and talked to the people at Sirius Octane. I reached out to Rock Sound. I basically did everything myself, and the label just kept pushing it back. And I'm just like, yo, what is happening? So it was extremely frustrating. I mean, there's more to it and everything, but like I said, I don't want to throw people under the bus. I'm not here to do that, but like, it was extremely frustrating, man. And it just put this black cloud over our heads.
Yeah.
It was an absolute nightmare, but I'm glad that it's out finally. But when it did come out, it was very bittersweet. It was just like,
it's more like kind of like a relief that it's like, right, it's done.
Like, out, whatever. You know, like.
So what's the plan with the Villa now? Have you got more material or what's the next step?
I guess transitioning from that to the Woe Is Me thing, we're basically just kind of, the Villa's still going to be there, you know, but we're kind of putting that on hold for now, especially with the hell that we've endured the last like couple of years. We just want to kind of like set that aside and then kind of focus on the Woe Is Me thing. Like I said, the Villa will still be there. You know, we're still going to do some stuff, but, and I love all the guys in the Villa. And it's cool. Like Chris, our drummer, he's Polyphia's drum tech. So he's out with them right now. So yeah, it's, I guess the timing's okay because, you know, like I said, the Woe Is Me thing's happening. You know, Chris is out with the Polyphia guys. So that's fine. It's okay to like put it on hold for a little bit now, which I'm fine with. And we just kind of been put through the ringer. So we just need some positivity, you know? And so with the Woe Is Me announcement and everything, that's kind of like where our focus is right now. So.
Yeah. And, you know, you don't want to, obviously you're getting your phone blowing up with this whole Woe Is Me thing. Imagine if it was blowing up as well with, you know, the Villa popping off at the same kind of degree. You wouldn't have time to breathe.
Oh, no, not at all. I would, I would definitely, I'd be definitely stretching myself thin. So,
yeah, like you said, that's a good kind of segue into this whole Woe Is Me reunion. So, like I say, being an outsider, I honestly didn't think that a Woe Is Me reunion was ever going to happen. When did the conversations kind of start to kind of make this thing happen?
You know what's funny is it was relatively quick. It was pretty quick. I want to say maybe people probably think that maybe we were planning this out for a while, for months, but it's maybe been a month and a half.
So that's really quick.
That's about it. Honestly, it's maybe been a month and a half or so since the initial conversations happened. And it was funny because, some of these guys that we called up, initially it started, somebody reached out to Hans and was like, hey, what would it take basically for Woe Is Me to get back together and play a show?
Right.
And before he had talked to anybody or we had really made any phone calls, he pretty much, with his response was like, man, I don't think you realize what you're asking. He's like, are you serious? I don't think you understand really what you're asking here. And they were like, yeah, we're dead serious. What can we do to make it happen? They had conversations and everything. So Hans talks to Kevin and I. He's like, hey, so I got this proposition. What do you guys think? And I was like, wow. They want to get Woe Is Me back together and play a show. And I'm like, huh. I'm like, that's funny. I was like, well.
Yeah, I bet you're a bit just taken aback. What do I even say to this?
I was like, what? I was like, really? I was like, I don't even know if everyone would be down.
Yeah.
I was like, and some of these people I haven't talked to in 10 years. Some of these guys it's been years. Certain guys haven't talked to each other in I'm talking 10 years. So I was like, I don't even know what the other guys, I don't even know what some of the other guys are even doing.
Right.
I kept up with a couple of them, but there were some other guys where I'm like, yo, I don't even know
where they are.
I was like, let me see if I have their number. Kevin Hans and I, we talked about it and we're like, all right, so if you want, we can at least start making phone calls and see if the first step is to even see if all the guys would be interested.
Yeah, because if that's a no, then it's not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. So let's see if the guys are actually interested first. Yeah. And so it was like, Hans, you call blah, blah, blah. Kevin, you call blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And it was like, Michael, you call blah, 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 and blah, blah. So we each took different people, different members, and we called. So everybody, and it surprisingly, everybody was on board pretty easily.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be we're going to have to pull some teeth to try to get some people to do it. And everybody's in such a different place in their life. Everybody's got full-time jobs and everything. Surprisingly, none of us have kids.
Well, that makes touring a little bit easier.
Yeah, exactly. But Andrew, our guitar player, he just bought a house and everything, and he's moved in. His girlfriend's moved in with him and everything, and he just bought a house. And Corey, he's doing his own fitness thing. He's a fitness instructor. He's got his own business and everything. So everybody's just in completely different walks of life. But surprisingly, I was calling some of these guys, and they were like, "No way, really?" They're like, "I didn't expect a phone call like this today." I'm like, "I didn't expect to be making this call so." Everybody surprisingly was really down fairly easily. So that's kind of how it came together. And we were like, all right, well, it started as hey, it's just going to be this show. But I think a couple of the guys were Austin was you do know, if we just played it, it can't just be this one show. And in our minds, we were yeah, well, it'll just be this one show, we'll kind of give people a chance to see Woe Is Me again. It'll be cool, Austin was you do realize people are going to lose their shit and be upset if we just do one show.
Yeah.
He's we're going to have to do more than that. And I'm okay. I was we'll play it by ear. Anyways, we started talking and everything, working everything out. We got the show offer and everything. We confirmed it. So we announced the show, or we did the teaser first. We did the little teaser, and oh my God. When we posted the teaser, we were all talking. We were oh my God. I didn't think this many people still cared. We knew that people still liked the band, but we just did not expect that at all. We couldn't believe it. We were really taken back. And as soon as we did that teaser, our phones were just blowing up. People were no way. Because people didn't expect it. I was telling them, I was like, guys, you do realize that it was so funny. Not to go back, but like a couple days before the teaser, I did like a little Q&A on my Instagram. Somebody asked, "Would you ever do a Woe Is Me reunion with Hans as the vocalist?" And I just put, "Nah." And I knew. I was like, "Oh, they're gonna laugh when we announce this little teaser."
In a few days' time, yeah.
A couple days when we post this teaser, they're gonna be like, "What?"
I bet some people saw that teaser and they thought it can't be a reunion. It's kind of like, I don't know, they're repressing on vinyl one of the albums or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, so many people were like, "Oh, they're just messing with us," or like, "Oh, they're just posting it for nostalgic reasons."
Yeah.
I was just like, like, but that's fine because like I think that like, you know, the fact that people just thought that this was not going to happen. Like people thought like, oh, all the guys in Woe Is Me hate each other, and like there's always been just this talk of just like all this drama, and there was, to be fair, we had our fair share of arguments and everything, but like we're like, you know, so we're different people now. We've all grown up. We've all got our own lives and work full-time jobs and everything. So like we're all in completely different stages in our lives, and we're not kids anymore. But yeah, like so like I don't know. It was just crazy how quickly it came together. But you know, everybody was down and everybody was like cool. And yeah, I just can't believe how easily it came together, and it was kind of shocking. But yeah, like that's one thing that like is really cool is the fact that like people just did not see it coming. Like they're like, people were like, "Oh, there's no way Woe Is Me would ever play a show." They all hate each other. Guys don't get along, and it was funny calling them up. And I was like, "Yo, dude, what's up? Haven't heard from you." Like, you know, it was fun, but like all these speculations, people were like, "Oh yeah, the Woe Is Me. There's so much drama. Like they all hate each other and everything." But it's like in reality, like we don't. Like we're all adults now. Like we're all grown up. Time's passed. You know, time heals things. You know, so yeah, like it's kind of really how it happened.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of mentioned, you know, there was a bit of conflict with you guys. You know, there was a few like lineup changes, and obviously there was when you went into Issues, there was like the diss tracks and stuff like that. But like you say, like it's been over 10 years since you were in the band, and, you know, people change. You were in your like early 20s then, now you're in your 30s. Like everyone like grows and becomes a different person, and they're in, like, say, you're all in different places of your life now. Was there any kind of like conversations about kind of those conflicts that you had when you were kind of putting this together, or like I say, was it just an easy conversation?
We laugh at it now.
Okay.
Like I mentioned earlier, I think our group chat like is absolutely hilarious because we're all adults and like we're not getting like pissy at like little remarks, and like we can look back and like laugh, and we're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe we did that," or like, "I can't believe, oh my God, I can't believe we got mad about that," or like whatever the case may be. But like we all laugh about it now. Like we make jokes, like we think it's hilarious. But I do think it's funny. I think it's cool that like people were just like, "Oh no way, Woe Is Me will ever get back together again." Like people just didn't. I just feel like people didn't think that would happen. I think that's kind of like a bit of the drive behind like why it popped off the way it did. I don't think people really expected it.
100%. Like I said, I definitely didn't expect it, just because it just didn't seem like something that would ever happen.
Yeah, it was extreme. I will say it was extremely hard to not tell anybody, because we were working on some stuff and like getting everything set up and like getting everything ready to announce the shows and everything. And we're working on so that show got confirmed, and we have a couple other shows confirmed, but we can't announce them yet.
Yeah, of course.
We will. So it was hard setting up shows and having to tell people, "Hey, we're coming back," but having to tell them like, you cannot say a word. Like you can't say a word. So it was hard, like setting up these other shows and saying, "Hey, just so you know, like we wanted to talk to you. Like we're setting up a show. Like Woe Is Me's going to come back." But like you have to tell these people in order to get these shows set up and everything going. But like you have to keep it under wraps. But it was so hard to not just like want to tell all my friends and everything. And like, even people like really close to me, like even like close friends, like didn't even know.
Well, at least you're kind of like only sitting on that news for like, say, like a month and a half. Imagine if you were kind of, this was something you're building up for like 6, 7, 8 months, whatever.
Yeah.
That would have been pretty tough.
Oh yeah, definitely. I would have had to probably like at least tell somebody, but yeah, it was even the month and a half or so, like it was tough to not like really like say anything. Even like close friends, and my mom, it was so funny because my mom didn't even know. She called me and she goes, "Yeah, my mom called me," and she goes, "Michael, what is this mean?" Like it's so funny because she left me I was busy and she left me a voicemail and she goes, "Hey, give me a call. You got some explaining to do." Like that was her response. And I like told her and she was like, "Why didn't you tell me?" Blah, blah, blah. Like, but I was like, I don't know. I just didn't want anybody to know. Didn't want him to get out. But like,
yeah,
she was like stoked. She was like cool. She's like, "Man, people are losing their minds, aren't they?" And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "You're going to have to do more than one show." And I was like, "Yeah, we'll see." You know? Yeah.
Get your cards close to your chest.
Yeah, we haven't announced anything else, but we are working on more shows. We're going to try to absolutely play as many as possible, but we are taking it like one day at a time. And all these things are getting thrown at us and everything. Like, you know, people are like reaching out like, "Hey, do you have management?" Like, "Oh, if you guys need a manager, blah, blah, blah." Or like, "Hey, if you guys need this, like, let me do this. Do you have a booking agent? Let me book you."
You're just kind of like trying to digest what's happening first before you take anything else on.
You know, I appreciate it, but like, hold on, like we're just trying to take it one step at a time, you know. But I am glad that like we're getting some more opportunities, you know, like people are reaching out and like interested and everything. And I don't think we could just do one show. I feel like people would just it'd probably just piss people off.
Well, I guess with people being this interested and giving these offers and stuff like that, just shows how much of an impact you guys did make, and that it's obviously resonated for the past 10 years where you haven't been active at all.
Yeah, it's definitely humbling. I was texting Austin too the other day. He was like, "Dude, I just didn't expect this, man." He's like, "This reaction's beyond anything that I thought." And I was like, "Yeah, man, I'm honestly humbled. Like it's honestly humbling to see that like the impact, because I didn't know, like it's been years, you know, I didn't know that it was going to be like this. I had no idea. I didn't know this many people were still going to care, you know?
Yeah.
And so, and I was telling Austin, I was like, "Dude, it's so humbling to see that our music just had an effect on that many people and it impacted that many lives." I was like, "Man, what we wrote impacted that many people." Like it's kind of ill, you know, and it makes you think, you know, like you're like, wow, like that's really cool to see, but very, very humbling at the same time.
Yeah. What do you kind of think when you look back and listen to that material yourself? How do you kind of feel about it? Do you think it's kind of like stood the test of time pretty well? How do you feel about it now?
It's funny. It's funny listening to it. Because we've been having to like, it's so funny because now we're having to go back and listen to these songs, like relearn parts and everything, like, yeah, like practice and like learn all these things that like we haven't played in years.
Yeah.
So we are having to go back and re-listen to these songs and everything. And it's cool to hear. And like, I don't know if it stood the test of time. Maybe it's hard to tell. Like, I think it might have. I think Numbers for its time was a very special album, you know, and it was definitely something different. Man, we sacrificed a lot for that album, but it's crazy. Yeah. I guess I don't know I can't really say if I feel like it stood the test of time. I feel like maybe, but like one thing I will say is I was actually listening to the songs the other day, and I feel like sometimes I forget that like we were right out of high school. Like it kind of like blows my mind. I'm like, how did we write this like out of high school? Like it's kind of like weird just thinking back, and I'm like, damn, like
I didn't realize until the other day when I was listening to it. I mean, I might be a little bit wrong here. You can correct me, but I don't think there's on any of the songs, there's like any choruses. There's no returning parts. It's kind of like one stream of consciousness the whole way through.
Yeah, Numbers doesn't have any repeating choruses at all. But like I was just thinking the other day, I was like, we were like teenagers. Some of us were teenagers. So Kevin, speaking of that, like Kevin in the studio during Numbers, he quit high school and got his GED, and he was doing math work in the studio.
Oh, really?
Like 18 years old.
That's crazy.
So yeah, he went down to.
So he was doing numbers whilst you were making numbers.
Exactly. Yeah. He was like, it was so funny because he was in the other room like doing like math work while we're writing an album. Yeah. And then he had to in the studio because we're there for like a month and a half. In that time, he had to go take his final test to graduate. Like, so he flew back to Atlanta to take his test and then went back down to the studio. So that's how young we were, like we were kids, It's crazy, but it's cool to think that like, man, we were just kids and we made an album that like really impacted a lot of lives. And it's just wild to me to think how young we were, literally right out of high school. Like it's kind of surreal.
Yeah. I think especially with that time, the way the metalcore scene kind of was, it was definitely kind of like a breath of fresh air, really, because, you know, you just had, I think around that time, things started to get a little bit saturated. It was just like chugcore, basically, wasn't it? Whereas then you guys came in and you've got all these kind of like textures and atmospheres in the album.
Yeah, it was cool because we had that, like, we just brought that like super like ambient, you know, sound to like metalcore. And I feel like it was kind of tasteful. And like, I don't want to like toot our own horn or anything or like boast or anything like that. But like, it was cool because like the heavy parts, it wasn't just like heavy. It was like, when it was a heavy part, like, I feel like it was called for. We try to make that tasteful, you know? So, but yeah, it's weird listening back to those songs and everything. And I'm just like, oh my God, like this just feels like centuries ago, you know?
I mean, I know you weren't in the band when they recorded and put out Genesis, but I think that's on its like, is it its 10th anniversary this year? I mean, have you guys kind of like discussed that?
Yeah. So it's it's in there. I feel like there's I've seen a lot of comments, people saying like, oh, they're going to do a Genesis 10-year anniversary. They're like, nah, we're not going to do it like an anniversary. I will say we're going to play a mixture of songs. We're not just going to do straight numbers. We're not going to do straight Genesis. Like we're gonna definitely mix it up. So
yeah,
try to give people like what they want. You know, like it's our first show back. You know, like it's our first announcement in over 10 years. You know, so we're gonna play the songs that like people, I feel like they want to hear. So
yeah, I think the reunion itself is special enough. We don't have to go and put an anniversary kind of thing in there on top of it. You know, and plus, I don't think that would really make sense. Like, granted, like, not all of us were there for Genesis, but we are going to play, you know, a mixture of songs, you know? Yeah. So is it not the same lineup that you had when you put out the Vengeance track? I think it's the same, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, exact same lineup. Yeah. So that'll be cool. And I feel like that just makes most sense. It's everybody that was there essentially like from the beginning, minus Hans, obviously, but like, well, I guess Andrew, but like Andrew came in pretty early on too. So, but it's, like I said, it's all the guys that were there pretty much essentially in the beginning, you know, minus Hans. But like, I think this lineup just makes the most sense.
How are you feeling about that first show coming back?
I'm excited. I just, it's going to feel good to play in front of people that are really excited. I feel like Kevin and I have talked about it, like not to go back to it or like not knocking anybody, but like the last tour Kevin and I did was the one where we were playing for like 5 people a night, and
right,
it was completely a disaster. So, and we lost money on that. So Kevin and I were like, it'll be nice to like actually play a show where people are there like singing the lyrics and actually give a fuck. So I'm like, yeah, that's gonna be nice. So I'm excited for it. I'm really, really excited for it. I think it's going to be cool. I hope nothing goes wrong. So
well, I think it's going to be quite interesting because you're going to have, you know, the older fans who were listening to you guys when you first came out, and you're going to have this like new wave of listeners as well, aren't you? Like these new people that, you know, have only just, you know, they're like your age when you made numbers. Yeah,
exactly. It's going to be cool. Like, it's so fun. I've seen a couple people who are like, reading some of the comments is actually hilarious. Like I'm like, some of the stuff people say is it actually cracks me up. Like, you know, like somebody's like, what was me coming back in 2022? They're like, this is awesome because I have adult money now, you know?
Yeah.
People like, everybody's all grown up now, but like, it's cool to see that like people our age are still like, not just like the younger crowd, the people that have like grown with us are still like down. They're like, yo, this is cool. Like I'm in my 30s now, but yeah, I'll still go see Woe Is Me. Like, it's cool to see that.
Have you guys started like doing rehearsals and stuff yet, or is that not quite started?
Not yet. Not quite yet. We're working on it. We'll probably start rehearsing really soon. So we'll start doing that relatively soon. Hopefully within the next like week or two.
Are you kind of like relatively close to what you in the same state, or are you kind of like dotting about?
Yeah, we all live in the same state. We all live probably within like 30 minutes of each other. Minus Andrew, he lives in Canada, so we'll have to fly down and everything, but which is fine.
And so you're saying you're doing this Monster Mosh Festival, and then you've got a few other shows that you can't quite announce just yet. I mean, I guess like you say, you're kind of playing by ear, but are you potentially going to maybe write more material as well as me, or do you not know just yet?
We don't really know just yet. We want to. It's been discussed, but not like in depth. It's been brought up like should we maybe release a single or something? But like I said, we are taking it like one step at a time and just seeing what happens. Like we're just kind of, like I said, we're all like in completely like different walks of life now. So we got to make sure it just makes sense in our life and like with our jobs and everything and like what we got going on, families and everything. So yeah, we just got to make sure it makes sense and everything. Like it's been brought up, but not like really discussed in depth. We might, like I don't. It's definitely a possibility, but like for now, we're just like focusing kind of like on these shows, and just like getting in front of people again and that sort of thing.
Yeah, you just want to see how it kind of goes down, not only for the fans, but kind of like how you guys feel about it.
Yeah, exactly. Like we got to make sure like it makes sense for us, like in our lives right now. So yeah, we're gonna play it by ear, and like we're all definitely in it. We're all definitely in. No, but I don't think anybody is literally like, yeah, I don't know if I want to do this. Like I might just want to do this one show, but like, no, everybody's into it.
Yeah.
100% see where it goes, which is cool.
Well, I'm super excited for you, man. Hopefully it gets to a point where you guys can come over to the UK. That would be super cool.
Sorry, where are you located?
Manchester.
Okay. I absolutely love that. Really cool city. Not knocking London, but I feel like from like the US, you got to go to London, like London, but like, man, Manchester is like a really cool city. Not knocking London or anything, but like I kind of like vibed with Manchester. I thought it was a really cool city. So
it's cool here, man. It's cool here. If you do eventually get here, then I'll get you a beer. We'll hang. That'll be cool.
Absolutely.
Nice one, man. Well, before I let you go and enjoy the rest of your day, is there anything else that you want to plug? Anything else you want to say? Anything not covered that you want to talk about?
I think that might be it. Yeah, just we're really excited. We're very, very grateful. We're really humbled to see so many people like excited about this and everything and what we got coming up. We hope to play as many shows as possible and see people there. We're all very, very excited, and it's cool to see the reaction. So that's really everything we got going on right now. So yeah.
Thanks again, Michael. I do really appreciate your time.
I appreciate you having me, man. Take it easy, all right?
And that's it. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please consider supporting the podcast in any way that you can. We have a Patreon where you can get access to each episode a week early, along with some other perks, a merch store, or you can leave a review wherever you're listening to this. You can also follow me on social media or subscribe to the newsletter where I'll send out each episode to you via email, along with regular playlists. All of this can be found at itsnotaphase.co.uk. That's itsnotaphase.co.uk. Thanks again for listening, and remember, it's not a phase, it's a lifestyle.